Hello team, welcome back. And in the previous lecture, we have seen the integration of the extent report with the test suites. Today, we will see how we can use the data provider with the test suites. So we will go to the Eclipse and we will start consuming the data provider in the test suites. So this is my code base on which we was working. We have the suite A, suite B and suite C. For the extent integration, we created the base class. Now what we need to do, we need to use the data provider. So I will close all these class first, close all, right? And we will open the class which is required for our execution. So we have already seen the concept of the data provider in the TestNG section, right? Data provider is used to pass the data to the test case. So what we will do, we will create a separate package and I will call it data provider. And within the data provider, we will create a new Java class and call it test data provider. So this is a class which we have created for the data provider. What are the changes do I need to do in the test suite to create the data provider? So what we will do, we will choose separate data providers for each test suite. Although we can do a thing like we can use the single data provider and single data provider can be used for all the test suite. But no, we are going to create a categorization. We will create a separate data providers for the each test suite. Why? Because it may possible that you need to categorize the data on the basis of the test suites. Even you need to categorize the data on the basis of the test cases. Whenever you will be using the data provider, you will not use the hard code data. You will be using the external data source. And that external data source could be the JSON, could be the Excel, and could be the YAML, and could be the XML. That could be anything, or maybe the property files, or the text file, or the CSV file. So we need the data provider to read the data from the external sources. And whenever we are dividing the data provider or categorizing the data provider on the basis of the test suites or the test case, we will have the complete flexibility to return a specific data for a specific test case. So whenever you want to use the data provider, what you need to do? Within your test class where you want to use the data provider, you need to pass the data provider to the test case at the rate test annotation. And you need to use the data provider class. So what we need to do? Very first, we need to declare the data provider class. So I will use a method public void data provider suite A like this. But the problem is that suite A have the two test case. And now let's suppose we want to pass separate data for each test. It means the data for the test A could be the different and the data for the test B could be the different. In that case, what I need to do? I need to identify my test name. So how we can identify the test name within the data provider? For that, we'll use a function method. Call it method and we need to import it. So let's import the method from the Java lang reflect. Now put a sys out and print test method name method dot, there is a function called get name. This is a very simple statement we are using. Let's copy your class name, go to your test case A and provide it here. And we need to use the dot class with this, which is the function within my test class. I will use the data provider equals to and the function name. The function name is data provider suite A. I need to supply that over here. Supply that within the double quotes like this. Can we execute the test A only? Let's execute it. Run as TestNG test. You see, we are getting some error. Let's open your console log, right? And it is saying failed suite A test A. And we are getting some error that requires a data provider named data provider suite A in class this. So why we are getting this error? Because till date we have not supplied at the rate data provider annotation on this function, right? On my data provider function. So how tested? It means TestNG is not able to identify that this is a data provider or not. If I will attach the annotation and execute it again, let's see what is going to be the output. Execute this. It is again failing, but we are getting the statement. I will tell you the failure reason, but we are getting the statement. Test method name test A. It means this particular function is able to identify that which function is calling this particular data provider. Why we are getting the error? Because data provider always return a two-dimensional array. And right now we are not returning anything. We are returning the null. We are returning the void null. That's why we are getting the error. Returned a null value. We'll correct it shortly, but let's understand the concept. So it means using this particular function method.getName, we are able to identify the method name, the method which is calling this particular data provider. Now let's move further. I will minimize this. And what we will do, we know that the data provider will return a two-dimensional array. So I will make it static, public static, and define the two-dimensional object array. This is getting the error. Let's return the null, return null to avoid the error. Simple, right? Shortly, we will return the two-dimensional array. So using this particular log statement, we can understand that we are getting the test name. Now let's see, you want to supply the different test data for the test A and test double A. How we can do that? So let's do one thing. Let's define a two-dimensional object array. Let's name it data, and by default define it. We are just doing this thing because we want to hard code the data within my data provider. But in ideal case, you are not going to hard code the data in the data provider. We will read the data from some external source, right? But for our testing purpose, for the initial testing purpose, we are hard coding the data in the data provider. Later, I will tell you the complete concept. Don't worry about it. Now let's check the method name. If my method is a test method, if my method is a test A, so we will use the method dot get name dot to uppercase. Let's convert to the uppercase dot equals, right? We can compare the string in a Java using the equals. What is my method name? My method name is test A. So I will call test A, something like that. Open the bracket, close the bracket. So if I have the method A, what I need to do? I need to initialize the data equals to new and create a two-dimensional array. Let's keep the size 2 and 2. Simple. We also need to define the object. We are initializing the object array. And now what we can do, we can fill the data in this particular data source, right? So very first is the 0th row, 0th index. Let's suppose define the username 1. Close this. Simple, I will copy paste this. This is the 0th row first index, first row 0th index, and first row first index. So 0th row first index, first row 0th index, and first row first index, because this is returning the two-dimensional array, right? Username 1, password 1, username 2, password 2. So over here you see we are hard coding the data within my data provider, correct? But ideally we will not supply the hard coded data to the test case whenever we will be working on the real time scenarios. We will read this particular data at a runtime from some external source, the source which I mentioned over here, or that could be anything, right? And then we will pass that data to the test case. But for the concept understanding purpose, we are defining the hard coded data over here. So using this particular if statement, we can cover the test case A. Now let's suppose you also want to cover the test case double A. Is that possible? Yes. Else if what? The same thing. And the test method could be double A. If this is the case, what I need to do? Let's repeat the same thing. This. Paste it here. Username double one, password double one, username double two, password double two. Something like that. And what I need to return? I need to return the data. Control A, Control Shift F, format the code. Save this. Similarly, if you want to declare the data for the test B, what you can do? You can copy the same thing, paste it here. Data provider suite B, right? We are defining the data for the test B, and defining the data for the test double B like this. Username, username 100, password 100, username 200, password 200, username triple one, password triple one, username triple two, password triple two. This is the data of the test B. This is the data of the test double B. Very simple. And it is also returning the data. This is also the data provider. So this is the data provider B for the suite B, and this is the data provider A for the suite A. Correct. We will go to the suite A. Over here, you see we are consuming the data provider, suite A. But we are not consuming the data. This is returning the two-dimensional array. We are not consuming that data in the test. What I need to do? I need to consume that as well. String, argument 1, comma string, argument 2. And now we can put a log statement, log username plus arg1, right? Again, and then I can simply copy it, paste it here, password arg2. Simple. Oh, like this. I will decrease the thread.sleep to 2 seconds. Save this. Similar thing what I need to do, similar things I need to do in the test case A as well. So I will copy this, go to the test case, paste it here, copy the log statement. Log we have already declared in the test base class, right? And paste it here. Reduce it to 2. And we also need to keep this thing on the test double A. Similar, go to the test suite B. We are handling just the B. Define it here, but the suite name will be the B, data provider suite B. These things are same. String argument A, argument 2, argument A, argument 2, and we are copy and pasting the log. So what we are doing, I will save the data provider as well, right? All the test class are already saved. In the test case B as well, we will minimize this. Even I will minimize this everywhere. 5-second wait is not sensible at all. But at a high level, we have created a data provider, and we created the data provider for the suite A and suite B. And we are handling both of my test case of suite A, test double A, and both of my test case of suite B. And the data provider are using the different values. So let's talk about a single test case. On a test A, what we are using? We are using this particular data provider suite A. And we are comparing that if the test name is test A, then which data provider will be returned? This one. It means if we are using this particular data provider, this test case will execute 2 times. Very first, it will execute for this data set, and second time it will execute for this data set, because we have the 2 rows in my data provider. Same test double A will execute 2 times, test B will execute 2 times, and test double B will also execute 2 times. Correct. If you want to execute any test a single time, you can reduce the number of rows. Let's keep it 1 1 and remove this. So now test B will only execute once, test double B will execute 2 times, this will execute 2 times, and this will also execute the 2 times. Let's do one thing. Let's go to your testng.xml and execute your test suite. Now you see the test B is executing, right? Test A is executing, again test A is executing, test double B is executing. So let's wait until the complete execution will be done. Total we have the 6 test case in my test suite, right? But you see that there are total 9 test code executed. And if you will go to the report, I will maximize this report. You see test A executed 2 times. One time for user 1, user password 1, and another time for the user 2, password 2. Similarly, test double B executed 2 times. Let's leave this report and open the extent report directly. I will open the index.html, and we are getting the index.html report, right? You see test B got executed for 1 time, username 100 and use password 100. Go to your Eclipse, Let's go to the test B data provider. Minimize this as well. Test B data provider. Username 100, password 100. Getting over here. Test double C, we have not used the data provider. Test A, we have used the data provider and this test executed 2 times. One time for username 1, password 1 and another time for the username 2, password 2. Same thing we are getting over here. You are using the data provider like this. You have the 2 rows, right? Test B executed for the triple 1 and test BB again executed for the triple 2 as per my data provider. Test C, no data provider. Test double A executed 2 times, double 1 and double 2 as per my data provider. So this is the way how you can use the data provider in your test suites. Although I accept that we are using the hard coded data over here, and this is not going to be the case at all whenever you will be implementing the right test cases or the test cases with the Selenium, because this data we will read dynamically from my external data source. But you can understand that this is the concept of the data provider and how I can use the data provider in my test suites, right? And you see the interesting thing. I don't need to change anything in the extent report. Report is generating perfectly fine for each execution, right? I don't need to change anything at a report level. This is perfectly fine at each execution. What I'm changing, either the data provider definition or either the test definition. So that's the concept of the data provider. We will continue the same concept in the upcoming lecture. Thank you, team. See you next time.